Executive Outlook. Today, we are joined by Robert, a consultant, educator, and a thought leader in the field of data governance. Robert is widely known for his work on data governance, a practical approach that has helped many organizations formalize governance without making it feel forced or burdensome. Welcome, Robert, to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me as a guest.
Yeah, so just also want to share with you that he has written several books, and today we are going to talk about some of the books in the podcast. So I'm very excited to know more as we have the conversation, Robert.
I didn't set out in my career to write any books, but the first book, I think it struck a chord with a lot of people. So I'm looking forward to talking to you about that and how it's evolved into what I'm doing now.
Oh, amazing. So please share how you started your journey in data governance and how you became a recognized voice and thought leader in this space.
Well, I guess to answer the second part of the question, how I became a recognized voice, I guess it's because I'm a little bit outspoken. I feel that there are a lot of organizations around our country here in the US and around the world that need help with data. And back when I was in the corporate world, this is what it took to really spark my career is I read an article by a gentleman who talked about stewardship. He talked about accountability for data. And I thought that was a great concept. And I took it to my leadership within the company that I was working for at the time. And they gave me the opportunity to implement stewardship. The term governance wasn't even being used back then. So, I think I've been in the industry as long as the industry has been known as data governance. The term stewardship evolved into governance, but the article was called Accountability to the Rescue. And the main point of the article was that there's already people in an organization that have responsibility for data. And we don't need to make governance feel as though it's something that's brand new, that it's over the top, that it's going to take more of their time. We can just build it into the things that they're presently doing. The idea of the article was accountability to the rescue. If we can hold people formally accountable for how they manage and govern data, that's going to be easier than if we try to hand it to them as something that's brand new to them. That's kind of the core concept of the first book was called Non-Invasive Data Governance. And that was published back in 2014. It has since been translated into 7 languages. That is how much of interest there was in taking this more practical approach to data governance. So once that book did well, I decided to follow it up with a book on lessons learned, and then a book about AI and the human element associated with governing and stewarding data. And that kind of led us to where we are today, which is the book that I'd like to talk to you about today.
Okay, all ears. Can you share what you have covered in the Data Catalyst Cube?
I'm going to hold up the book, okay, and I'm not going to hide behind it here, but this is the new book. It is called the Data Catalyst Cubed. So I'm trying to take a unique perspective around data governance. There is a lot of negative press or negative publicity around data governance where it's failing in organizations. And in fact, people are scared of the term governance. It's kind of a big, scary term to people, and they're looking for other words to use to describe what governing data really looks like. The term that the industry seems to have selected is the term enablement. Okay, instead of using governance, because governance is too scary, it's like government. We're going to use the term enablement. And I think that's too passive. I think if we can get data to become a catalyst or to become a spark or an accelerant for successful AI within organizations or successful data analytics, that's the whole idea of the catalyst. Is let's reframe data governance as being an accelerant to make good things happen within the organization instead of this big scary thing that's going to interfere with how we do business in our organization. So if you said you're all ears, so I'll take another moment to describe. So as I mentioned, the book is the Data Catalyst Cubed, and you'll notice that I have the number 3 in the corner. There's specific meaning to the word catalyst, which I just described, being that accelerant, But the idea of it being cubed is that when you cube something, you take it and you multiply it by something, and then you multiply it by something else. And those three things that I'm talking about as being the data catalyst equation is that the data catalyst cubed is equal to data governance, specifically non-invasive data governance, because that's what I focus mostly on, multiplied by the effects of formal change management within an organization. Because if I came to learn that if we can't get people to change their behavior associated with the data, our governance program is probably going to fail. So it's data governance times change management, and then multiplied again by, I'm sure you're familiar with the term data literacy. There's actually a move in the industry to move away from the term data literacy. I'm using the term data fluency. If we can get people to become fluent and confident in the use of the data, that's going to also help us to get more business value out of our data. So again, the data catalyst cubed is data governance multiplied by change management and multiplied again by data fluency. And that's what the book is all about.
Amazing. And if anyone is going through it for the first time, so what they will get the insights from the book?
The whole premise of the book is that the narrative around data governance is causing problems. It's not actually helping the industries to succeed. So just changing the mindset from it being something that's difficult or that it's going to be just an enabler to how can we use the governance of data in such a way that it makes our AI more beneficial to our organization. So again, the whole idea around governance as being more of a discipline to becoming an accelerant, to becoming a catalyst. And then the real reason for the book is my realization that change management is a big part of this. If we can't get people to change their behavior and to become more confident in their use of the data, things are not going to improve in our organizations.
So, how can anyone implement the data governance and how they can have this change management in place?
Well, I was interested in coming on this podcast to talk about the executive outlook. We need to change the way that executives are thinking about data governance. They think that data governance is something new to the organization. And I would take the exact opposite view of that. And I would try to convince executives that governance is already taking place in your organization. The problem is that it's informal. Okay. So there's no people who have been, identified or recognized as being stewards of the data. The governance just takes place through normal, typical process. I'm suggesting that we can formalize things that are informal in our organizations. There's already people defining data. There's already people producing data and using data. If we can formalize that relationship between people and data, instead of handing it to them as something that's brand new, we eliminate all of that scariness around data governance because we're really not giving people, we're really empowering them and helping them to become a spark in the organization to improve the value that the organization gets from their data. So that's kind of the main point, is that use these three disciplines and use governance as a spark and change the executive mindset to, we're already doing this. We can do this better, instead of this is something that's brand new to our organization.
Do you want to suggest some steps how to set up the governance formally?
Well, a lot of it starts at the top of an organization, is getting the executives, is getting your audience really to understand what governance is and what it's going to take to be successful. Everybody is trying to move into AI as fast as they can, and they're not looking at the foundational elements. AI doesn't really care where it gets its data from. Okay. It can get it from structured data within your systems. It can get it from emails. It can get it from document management. It can get it from unstructured sources. There's already a level of governance taking place in organizations. And if we can take as a first step, trying to identify, and I use the word recognize, let's recognize the people in the organization who already have accountability, and let's help them to do it better. instead of handing it to them as something that is brand new. So the place I would start is with the executive mindset, with the executive perspective, and convince them that this is not something that's going to cost us a lot of money. From my experience, I've seen that organizations, the amount of money that it spends to put effective governance into place is the amount of time that you put into it. Tools will be effective. Metadata management is important. What you know about your data is important. But I would start with the executive mindset and then put somebody in charge of this. Because there's a lot of organizations that are still struggling to even find the appropriate person to lead governance forward in their organization.
Can you share some instance because of the bad governance the company has cost a lot of in different ways, maybe financially, non-financial efforts, productiveness? Do you want to share some instance how the bad governance looks like?
I just assisted a friend of mine by submitting an article, a chapter to a book that he's writing. And it was a use case about an organization that is in the food distribution industry. And there was a lot of government pressure on them to maintain a detailed record of ingredients within products. Okay, and nutrients within products. And in this organization, all of the different product categories, they defined nutrients and allergens, for example, a different way. When the government came to them and said, we're going to monitor your use of this type of information, all of a sudden they recognized that by doing it a different way in every product area of the organization, that was causing problems, that was causing delays, that was causing inefficiency and ineffectiveness. Just by recognizing and getting those people to understand that they played a big role, they were data stewards too, domain stewards of data in their product areas, getting them to understand the importance of this data and then moving in a consistent way to collecting that information. They improved, first of all, they complied with what the government was asking them immediately. They didn't give people responsibility that was over and above what they were presently doing. So they moved from being inefficient to being efficient. They moved from being ineffective to effective, all because they moved from being informally kind of the owners of that data to understanding the role that they play with the governance of that data. So I thought that was a great example of an organization that just kind of embedded it into the things that they were already doing, rather than introducing it as something that was brand new to the organization.
What are your takes on AI governance?
It's interesting. People should connect with me on LinkedIn because I end out, like I said, I'm outspoken and I like to write a lot. I wrote an article just recently that said that data governance is not related to AI governance. Okay. And I wrote that kind of tongue in cheek as kind of a way to attract attention to the article. AI, the way I define data governance is that it is the execution and enforcement of authority over data. If I use that same definition for AI governance, it holds true. It's the execution and enforcement of authority over the definition, production, and usage of AI within an organization. The things that you're governing are different. You're typically governing outputs from AI. You can also be governing the quality and the value of the inputs to AI. But in data governance, you are focusing on governing data as an asset. In artificial intelligence, you've got to govern the inputs, the outputs, everything that's concerned with how the results that are coming out of your AI. Can they be trusted? Can the data that goes into the decisions that are coming out of your AI be trusted? Governing all of that, they're just different disciplines, but they're very closely related.
What do you think, like with the evolution of AI, how the companies are right now adopting AI?
From my experience, you're finding in larger organizations, there are different pockets of pieces of the organization that there seems to be a lack of overall AI strategy within organizations. It seems like there's a lot of distributed use of AI within organizations. I expect that to change in the coming years, is that organizations will have people in the organization who are specifically responsible for AI and for the governance of AI.
Any advice you want to give to change the mindset when it comes to governance, be it data governance or AI governance?
My biggest advice to anybody is to start with the premise of we're already governing. If you introduce governance as something that is new to the organization, that is how people will recognize it. If you start with the premise of we've already got people who are accountable for how they work with data, let's formalize that. That's the biggest change I would say right now, is to get people to realize that data governance isn't this big scary thing, and that it's something that can be embedded into the culture of an organization in a non-invasive way, and in a way that it becomes kind of that accelerant to get people to trust the data and have confidence in the data to use it more wisely.
And what, when we get the confidence on the data, what are the different, I would say, what are the different perspectives it has? Can you share some examples?
Well, one of the things that was indicated to me recently was the whole idea of fluency with data is kind of it's a new term that's being used to describe getting people to be confident in the data. So, what are some of the things that would indicate confidence? Being able to determine the best questions to ask of your data. So think of it as becoming fluent in a language versus becoming fluent in data. Okay, if you can become literate in a language, you can read and you can write and you can understand. It doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to have the whole cultural aspect, that you're really going to be fluent in it. So being fluent in speak, just because I can speak French and I can't speak French, but if I could speak French, doesn't mean that I could converse on such a level that I would truly understand. I think the same thing has to hold true for data. People need to be confident that they can get access to the data, that they know what data exists, that they understand the data, that the knowledge about the data is available, that they understand how the data can and cannot be used. All those things build confidence in the data. If you have access to the data and you understand the data, there's a higher likelihood that you'll become fluent and confident.
Thank you so much for joining, and I will definitely read your book. We'll get a copy and we'll share your insights, that how I got it. I'll write an article about that.
I hope people take away just the whole mindset that governance is not this big scary thing. And whether they read the book or they take a non invasive or an invasive approach, whatever works best in your organization. Again, I'm just trying to open eyes and make people aware of there's different approaches, there's alternative approaches to data governance. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to do that.
For sure. Thank you so much for being the part of the Executive Outlook.
Thank you.